I've mentioned before on this channel how much I loved our adoption agency and the social workers that we worked with as we walked through our process of adopting from foster care. I have even recommended that agency to several of you. And while my agency was great and my social workers were super supportive and helpful and there for us, the truth is that your agency can only do so much. Even if you have a great agency, they're limited in what they can do for you. So today I want to cover some of the things that your agency can't really provide for you so that you can have a realistic idea of what it will be like to adopt from foster care. Hey, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, my name is Katie. And on my channel, Adopt Informed with Katie, we talk all about adoption from foster care and different adoption tips and tricks. So definitely subscribe if that is interesting to you. I am an adoption consultant and I have worked with families from all across the country to help them get started on adopting from foster care. If you're interested in that at all, I will go ahead and put a link in the description below so you can check out the services that I offer. So let's talk about your adoption agency. What does your adoption agency do for you? The main role of your adoption agency is to, number one, train you so that you are somewhat prepared to enter into the adoption role, to identify whether or not you would be a safe and effective adoptive parent, and to provide some support in that post-placement time period. These are all great things. And like I said earlier, our agency did so much of this for us, and I'm so grateful for everything they provided for us. However, I do feel that there is a limit on what your agency can do, and it's good to be aware of that so that you know what to expect from them. Because for all the ways my agency prepared me really well, there are other things that they just really couldn't do. And I'm not saying this like they were a bad agency or they refused to do it. It's just not possible in the capacity that they had to provide all of the support us adoptive parents could really use. So why can't our agency provide everything we need? So reason number one is that adoption is just really unpredictable. I have friends who have adopted, we obviously have adopted, and all of our stories look very different from one another. So many factors go into your adoption experience, not just the agency you choose, but even how old the child was when they were placed with you, how many previous placements they had before that you adopted them, different mental health challenges they may have, different mental health challenges you may have as the parent. So obviously, an agency can't predict all of those different things that could happen to these different families. The second reason your agency can't completely prepare you is because you are one of many. If you are in training classes with other people and they all have their own unique needs, the truth is the social workers, the agencies do not have the capacity or the resources to individualize trainings specifically for each person and how they've responded to things in the past and their personality type. You get what I'm saying. It's just that they can't. The third reason that I think an agency can't fully prepare you is that in these trainings, they talk at you, not to you. I don't know about you, but I'm much more of like a hands-on learner. And so if I'm asked to just sit and just listen to something, I have a hard time soaking that in as much as if I was trying it or I was writing things down or doing activities to help me learn those things. And oftentimes our foster care and adoption trainings are pretty dry, they're pretty boring, and the format that they can often use is where one person speaks and everyone else just kind of sits there and listens. And the issue with this is it doesn't give you a chance to process. You're just soaking in information. Now, obviously, I like information. I called this Adopt Informed. I was someone who enjoyed soaking up that information and learning it. But the issue is, if you're just soaking in information constantly and you're never having a chance to process through, how is it making you feel? What is it reminding you of? Is it triggering anything from your childhood? Are you concerned about things? Do you have fears? You don't really have a space to vocalize those things often in adoption trainings. Sometimes that will happen. I can think of a few times in our agency trainings where we had an opportunity to maybe talk to someone else or things like that, but it was usually like, a couple minute activity rather than being able to go really deep. And so unfortunately, that is what a lot of adoptive parents are lacking as they walk into this process. They wish that they had someone they could talk to about all they're going through. Another reason why our agencies don't always do the greatest job preparing us is that the people leading these trainings have never been adoptive parents. Now, in our case, I will say this does not apply to me. In our agency, all three of the women who ran our trainings, they were all adoptive parents. They also brought in other adoptive parents to train us as well. And so that is something I am super appreciative of from our agency, but I also don't think that's the norm. We originally had started with another agency where, there was nothing wrong with it, but the girl who was leading it was like younger than us, I think, and she wasn't even a parent, let alone an adoptive parent. And so it's a little bit odd receiving training from someone who's never been there. And yes, they've studied these things. They can still explain the concepts. They've still worked with kids from foster care. It's not that they have nothing to offer, but I just think that working with kids is a completely different experience than having them live in your home and be your responsibility. I've been a teacher for 10 years, and I can tell you that teaching kids at school and working with them, I've had some really close relationships, some really great heart-to-heart moments, but it is absolutely nothing like parenting children. Because at the end of the day, I can send those kids home and they have a family that's taking care of them as well. When you're the parent, you're the family that's taking care of them. I just think there's a greater pressure as a parent to a kid rather than someone who just happens to work with them, if that makes sense. And it's also hard because if you have questions about what it's really like to be an adoptive parent, if your agency is having you trained by someone who has only ever worked with kids in foster care and has not actually experienced parenting them, they're not going to quite understand the depth of some of the issues that you'll face. And the next reason, which honestly is a big one, and it makes me pretty frustrated because I think it's more common than it should be, is that some agencies tend to gloss over the tough stuff. I actually just had a client who we were emailing back and forth, and she was telling me that they've already done all of their adoption training, but they just didn't feel like their agency really touched on the difficult points or the things that could be challenges for them in adoption. And to me, that's like a huge red flag because every adoptive parent that I know, and I can say this very confidently, will tell you that adoption or foster parenting was way harder than they expected it to be. And realize all these people went through training to get there. And I will even say that I feel like our agency did prepare us better than some for some of the difficulties we may experience. But still, most adoptive parents will tell you it was harder than they thought. So if you have an agency that's glossing over the tough stuff, which unfortunately does happen, then you are going to be even less prepared. And this is the thing. Your agency, while they do care about you and they want you to do well, they also are in a place where they feel the pressure that there are these kids in foster care, these kids who need to be adopted that are waiting and they need to get you through and they don't want to lose you. And so I think that sometimes agencies are a little afraid to scare you off, which I think is pretty wrong because it's better to be prepared in my opinion. So they won't quite dig into some of the really difficult things that you could experience as an adoptive parent. And I don't know about you, but in my mind, it's always better to kind of expect things to be really difficult and then be pleasantly surprised when they're not, rather than the other way around. So that can be a major issue with some of these adoption agencies. And like I said, this is not all of them, but I have heard enough stories of this happening that I think it's worth bringing up. And the last reason why your agency cannot fully prepare you in the ways that you may want is because it's a little bit of an interesting dynamic between you and your social worker. So while your social worker is there to help you and support you, they are also the ones deciding whether or not you receive your foster care and adoption license. And so yes, during your home study, that social worker is going to get to know you very, very well. Probably better than you want them to know you. They're going to know all about your marriage, all about your family life growing up, all about your current family dynamics, about your finances, all sorts of things. But it can feel really transactional because it's like a 2-day thing, or they come for 2 different meetings. You pour out your heart and your life story to them and they write it down. Despite the fact that you're sharing a lot of personal information, it's not very relational. And I think it's hard sometimes for people to feel like they can be vulnerable with their social worker, knowing that that person helps decide whether or not they can adopt. And I think a lot of prospective adoptive parents have this fear or this incorrect belief that you have to be perfect. You can't have anything wrong with you or struggle at all in order to be approved as an adoptive parent and be matched with a kid. That's definitely not true. But this belief is pretty common, and it can stop people from really being open with their caseworkers because they're worried that that person may not license them if they know they're struggling. And so while agencies are great, and I do think it's incredibly important to pick the right agency and not just go with the first one you find, I just want you to be prepared for the fact that your agency can help you a lot, but they cannot carry everything for you. And they shouldn't have to. Honestly, they can't. It's not something that they're equipped to do and not something we should really expect them to do. But I don't want to just leave it there on this kind of like depressing note of the ways your agency can't help you, because there are a lot of things that you can do to support yourself throughout this process. The first thing is that if your agency doesn't offer a support group, there are a lot of adoption and foster care support groups around. If you just search foster care or adoption support group near and then your city, I guarantee you'll find something. There is usually something, at least in a nearby larger town or larger city. That could be great to get into even as you're still in the waiting process, just to go talk to other adoptive parents and get their input and things like that. And they could become a really great support system once your child is in your home as well. Another thing that you can do is you can do extra reading outside of your training. So if you want to learn more strategies rather than the few that they give you, you can read a few books. I always recommend people read The Connected Child or The Connected Parent. I also recommend that book, Telling the Truth to Your Adopted or Foster Child. And there are so many more. So look into some of those resources. And I mean, obviously watching videos like this as well, and videos by other people who have fostered and adopted, can be really helpful to get an insight into what it's really like. And you know, if you can't find a support group like I mentioned earlier, I think it'd be really important for you to just find a friend you can be really open and honest with. Maybe it's your parent or something, or maybe it's your best friend or someone from your church, someone that you feel like you can talk to about the highs and lows that you're going through as an adoption. They can kind of be like a safe space for you to share some of those more difficult feelings you may experience. And another option is you could work with someone like me. As an adoption consultant, I help people all the time who have so many questions about adoption, or they're unsure, or they have fears surrounding it. And here's the thing, I'm not an agency. I am not in charge of you receiving your foster care adoption license. I am not desperate to have you adopt a child out of the foster care system. I want you to, but at the same time, like, I tell people how it is. There's no benefit for me if you continue on in the adoption journey, if that makes sense, or if you go one route versus the other. And here's the thing, next week, I am launching a brand new program called Equipped to Adopt. And this program is basically designed to do all of the things that your agency can't do for you, which is to provide you with personalized support from someone who has been there. We adopted all 3 of our kids from foster care. I know what this journey is like, and I've helped other people through this journey over the past couple of years. So next week, be looking for a video from me. You might want to subscribe, and if you haven't turned on that bell notification, because in my video next week, I'm going to be giving out a secret little discount code for those of you who make it to the ends of these videos. You want to make sure that you're aware of that because it will be for a limited number of people. And this program is only going to be open for booking for 1 week. It's a 6-week program. I'm going to walk you through everything you need to talk through before you adopt. And it's fully customizable. You can do it over the course of anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months. And there are about 12 different session topics that you can choose from that are very guided. I'll give you a little bit of homework, get that hands-on learning stuff going on, and a lot of conversations and relational support with someone who has been there. Basically, I'm giving you the support I wish I had. So keep your eyes out for that video next week where I'm going to announce that. And if you haven't yet and you want to take my quiz about are you really ready to adopt, that'll also be in the description box below. It's free. You can take the quiz and see what your score is, and I'd love to hear. Well, that is all for this week. I appreciate you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. You're my favorite. If you made it all the way to the end, if you can put a heart emoji in the comments, I like to see who makes it through. You know, you're my people. So have a great week, and I will see you next Wednesday.